What's going on, guys? I'm going to attempt to talk through this entire 10-minute video without one edit. As these videos move towards creating production budgets, there's a few things that we need to cover, like location fees and union paperwork. But let's just start with figuring your crew rates. And let's do that right now. So how do you figure out your crew rates? And more importantly, how do you figure out your rate in this industry? There's a lot of factors that affect the rate that you can get on any given day on any given project, and some of those are your time in the industry, your expertise, the value you bring to a project, your breadth of knowledge, your contacts, your resources, and the kit that you bring with you. And what do I mean by kit? Well, that's everything that you might need to do the job. For instance, a hair and makeup person would be their makeup and brushes and blow dryers, anything that goes along with it. So since we've been talking about producing, that kit could include your Rolodex and your laptop and the budgeting software, your scheduling software, maybe your screenwriting software. It really depends on what you're bringing to the particular project. So as you spend time in the industry, you accumulate more contacts and you accumulate more software and you accumulate a faster computer, and your Rolodex becomes something that you can use as leverage to raising your rates. And it all comes down to bringing more value to a project. The more value you have, the more you can get paid. So when you're starting out in this industry, just like any other industry, your value is a lot lower than it will be if you've been in it for 10 years or 20 years. So unless you have a friend or family member that's allowing you to use their resources to boost your value in the industry, your pay scale is going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. This is a big advantage to going to a film school because you meet a lot of people, and a lot of those people know a lot of people, especially if you went to film school here in Los Angeles or even at NYU in New York. But that's not to say that you can't become successful by taking another avenue, like watching this video or Potato Jet. Any source of knowledge that you can later apply to a professional setting is going to bring more value to the project and allow you to raise your rates over time. If you own a project as the producer, well, then your pay becomes a little more tricky to figure out, because really your pay is dependent on the performance of the piece that you're putting together. I'm specifically referring to making a narrative film in this case, not so much an industrial or a commercial, something along those lines. So let's assume that you're not in Los Angeles and that you don't have a Rolodex full of people who can be your crew on a project that you're doing. How do you figure out how much to pay those people? First and foremost, you want to ask for a quote for their day rate. Now, oftentimes your ability to raise money might not be in line with people's day rates that they quote to you. But one thing to be sure of, if you can offer somebody steady work over the course of several days or even a couple weeks, they're going to be a little more flexible because they would rather have several days of work rather than just one day hit where they get their full day rate. So in our hypothetical, let's assume that you don't know anybody who is a grip, but you know somebody who works in, say, construction and is very handy and can get things done. Well, that might be your key grip. That might be the person that you rely on to get things done for you, to make your shoot happen. So how do you figure out how to pay that person? Well, they're probably not going to be at the upper end of the pay scale because they're still going to have some learning to do. So then you want to figure out, where's the nearest production hub? Is it Louisiana? Is it Georgia? Is it Chicago? Is it New York? And try and figure out what the rates are for that position in that area, and then sort of walk backwards until you find a rate that both works for them and works for your budget. It doesn't do you any good to agree to a rate that you can't afford. But let's assume that you want to make your first short film and you want to send it to a film festival and get discovered and go on to bigger, better things and the bright lights of the big city. But your budget is low, so you want to ask people to help you on your movie. Well, the very minimum that you can pay somebody is whatever your local minimum wage is. Now, you're not going to get people to fly from LA to somewhere in the middle of nowhere and work for minimum wage. That's just not going to happen. But at some point, there became this idea that in the film industry, asking people to work for free is okay. It is not okay. Asking people to work on your movie for free is the equivalent of asking the mechanic to work on your car for free. Sure, he might do it, but can you really trust it down the road? Probably not. It's like this in a lot of creative fields. People offer you exposure, or you'll get copy and credit on their movie. That is bullshit. Whether you're new in the industry or you're a veteran, if you're asking somebody to work for less than minimum wage, you are asking them for a favor. And I cannot stress this enough. You owe them. The other option is you give them a producer credit and they take part ownership in your project. You cannot claim to be a producer in good faith and represent that to an investor or a potential client if you did not pay the people who got the project made for you. And if you take a gig where they promise you copy, credit, exposure, and all of those things, you have to understand that there's very little chance that a short film or even a feature film at that level is going to ever recoup any money. You'd be far better off taking a paid production assistant job and working your way up that way. You'll have better contacts, you'll have at least a little money in your pocket that'll cover your gas and hopefully your rent, and you just move forward that way. It drives me crazy that people do this to other people. This is very different than if you work with a group of friends to make a short film, or you work in a film collective where everybody contributes their time and resource to creating a project that moves everyone forward. In that respect, you're just hanging out with friends, so it's a good time and you get to take days off from your day job and you get together and you do something creative for the art. So if your budget doesn't support the rates of the people that it takes to get this movie made, you need to either cut the number of days to give you more flexibility in your budget, or you need to cut crew and cut corners that way so that you can get the project made. One way or the other. That being said, I have definitely asked people for favors, and I have definitely done a lot of favors for people. It might come in the form of me providing some kind of consultation to the project they're doing. It might involve me coming for a couple of days and working for free on their set. It might involve me having to act because that's not doing anybody any favors. If you pay people on time and don't bounce the checks, they're gonna keep answering your phone calls and they're gonna keep coming to help you out when you need it because they like working with you and they know that you're not just trying to get one over on them. Okay, so we've worked through my hostility. I got my therapy done in this little session here. I've been getting some questions in the comments and on Instagram, and some people even found my email address. And I want to address a few things that were repeated questions. The first one, the question is, what's the difference between above the line and below the line? So this is a budget top sheet, and it represents a summary of your entire total budget. Now you can see here, there is a line. And you can see above that line is development costs and story rights and the producer and the director, the cast. All of those things represent above the line costs. Those are things that are not negotiable to get a project made. Below the line would represent your total crew, props, costumes, all of those things that could be flexible. It really just represents that there is a separation between the people who absolutely have to be there. If we assume you have Dwayne Johnson as the star of your movie and suddenly he's not available, you can't just replace Dwayne Johnson with somebody else. Whereas if you have one costume designer that you really like to work with and he or she is not available, you go on to another costume designer. Does that make sense? If you need more clarification, leave a comment. We can come back to that. Moving on. So a couple of videos ago, somebody asked the question, what are my top 5 production books? This is YouTube. Why does anybody want to know about books? But I'm a big time book believer, so I'm going to go ahead and force it down your throat. So let's go through some of those right now. I do have some in hard copy, some in Kindle. Kindle makes it a lot easier to take all your production books with you. I highly recommend it. So I'm going to give you 5 books that I think you should definitely check out. As a reminder, this is not an extensive list and it's not going to include everything you possibly need to know because you have to have conversations from the very beginning of creating your business plan all the way through sound editing and delivering to a distribution company. But these 5 will give you a great jump start and get you moving forward. So the first book I would recommend is Robert McKee's story. I've talked about it in a past video. Definitely check out his book. The second book also that I have on my e-reader here is The 5 C's of Cinematography. This book was written in the 1960s. It has never been revised because the information that's in it is so strong. The next book that I would have you check out is The Producer's Business Handbook. This book is the second edition. I believe it's on the fourth edition now. It is a great book. It is full of useful information. I use it now as a reference. I come back to it anytime I have questions on something that I might have spaced on, but it is one that you definitely need to check out. The next book that I highly recommend you reading is one that I talked about in the scheduling primer, and that is Singleton's Film Scheduling. This book will help you figure out how long it's going to take to shoot your movie, and that is the first step towards creating a budget. So definitely check out Singleton. And the fifth book I would definitely recommend for you is The Complete Film Production Handbook. This was written by a friend of mine, a friend of mine, Eve Light Honthaner. I hope I pronounced that right. This book has everything. Now, since I'm one to overdo things and I constantly go above and beyond, I didn't just do 5. I got some bonus ones for you here. Bonus number 1, Save the Cat. Now, I have a hard copy of it. I loaned it to somebody. I have not received it back yet. Hopefully I do at some point. A friend of mine uses this exclusively to teach her college level classes on screenwriting. It is a great read and it can really help you. The next bonus book that I'm going to include here is Writing Movies for Fun and Profit, and it definitely has fun and crossed out. So Writing Movies for Profit by Robert Garant and Thomas Lennon. If you don't know who Thomas Lennon is, he was Lieutenant Dangle in Reno 911. These guys wrote the Night at the Museum movies. I don't know that I learned anything from this book, but it is super entertaining and it teaches you how to drink tequila and write scripts. And this final book was written about 2,400 years ago by Aristotle. But Aristotle's analysis of drama is what makes up the stories that we know of today. So I highly recommend you check out that one. I would love to show you an example, but somebody borrowed my copy as well. And now I don't even remember who. That's a bummer. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully some, any, or all of this information is sinking in. Stick with me. We're gonna have bigger things to come. I've included Amazon links in the description for you guys to check out these books. Click like, share, subscribe, whatever. So we'll talk to you soon. Bye.